Hi, folks. It's Keith, Victor Echo 3 Sierra Victor Quebec, and sometimes Victor Alpha 3 Kilo Echo India. And I thought I'd do something a little different today because I've been back doing Morse code now for a little bit over a year. And I thought, there's people out there, and I see this all the time in Facebook groups. How do I learn? How do I do this? Or I'm going to try this. So I just thought I would sort of take a look at some of the myths that are out there. And, I'm trying to do sort of top 10 myths, or let's call it busting Morse code or CW myths, because you learn a lot of this as you go through. And there's a lot of stuff out there that you hear from people all the time. And, some of it's half true, some of it isn't true at all. So I just thought I'd approach some of this based on my experience over really the last year to year and a half. So let's start off with the one that I hear probably the most often. And full disclosure, I am now teaching the Long Island CW Club's beginner level one. So some of this is coming from my own students because this comes up when we have discussions. So the first myth, you're too old to learn Morse code. Simply not true. But it's a very common one that you hear. I see a lot of those on Facebook where, there's various slow speed Morse code groups, and someone goes in and says, I'm in my 70s, I'm in my 80s, I just can't learn it. I'm too old to learn it. Not at all. Does this face look like a young face? Definitely not. And I think if you have the will and the desire, you're going to learn. So that's really one of the first ones to get out of the way. You're never too old to learn it. It's about practice. It's about following process and not getting discouraged. But yes, you will learn. And yes, we all learn at different levels. Like we learn at different speeds. It took me, I think, once I got serious, and I say once I got serious, I tried learning on my own for about 4 months. And then I did get serious and took instruction. And at that point, from that point on, it was roughly 6.5 to 7 months, and I was on the air. So you can do it. Now, LICW, the club that I'm an instructor for, they put it at roughly 4 months, 4 to 5 months. If you are dedicated and you practice properly, then yeah, you're probably going to be able to get on the air. So I think that's one of the first ones. You're not too old. And tied to the one of being too old, I get people who say, well, I wear hearing aids. How am I going to do this? Well, I've got two. It works just fine. There's no issues there. We have some ham radio operators who have lost a lot of their hearing or, in some cases, are deaf. So there are ways to try and help them as well. Now, for those who have been like myself, around a lot of noise and so on in their youth, we've probably lost a lot of that upper frequency. But on the practice site, well, you can go in, you can set the tone, you can change the tone to something that you can hear to a lower tone, somewhere in the 500s. You can go into your radio, and most of the new radios now, you can go in and adjust the tone. So, yes, so there are ways around this. Now, when you look at all the other issues that are out there, I think the other one that is probably the most prevalent is myth number two. You have to be fast. No, no, you don't. We've all seen movies of people sending 30, 40 words per minute, and we think that's what we all have to do, and you don't. No, I go back to learning Morse code. Actually, the first time was 1989-90, and that was when the Americans had their novice bands and their novice CW operators, and there were loads of them all over the place at 5 words a minute, 10 words a minute, that type of thing. So, yeah, some of them are still out there. I hear lots of operators around 10 to 12 words a minute. So, you don't have to be fast. You get on the air and you go at the speed that you can go at. And one of the things with most ham radio operators, if you're, let's say, you're calling them or answering a call, you hear a call, you decide to answer them, and you're sending at 10 to 12 words a minute. And that guy may be operating at 15 to 20. Most of them will slow down to your speed. So no, you don't have to be fast. And if you go on some of the sites, and one I used in a previous video was the reverse beacon network. You can go in and punch in the speed that you want to listen to and see how many operators are out there. And if you do a maximum of let's say 13 words per minute, you're going to see an awful lot of people on there at that speed. So you don't have to be very, very fast. And I have heard a number of Europeans, so it's probably got to do with their licensing, 7 words a minute, 9 words a minute. So no, you don't have to be fast. And the other thing is, once you're on the air and you're actually doing this stuff live, you tend to get faster. You tend to send a little bit faster. You tend to receive a little bit faster. And over time, you just automatically push yourself that little bit. And you're going to find that, yes, your speed does improve. So no, you don't have to stay off the air because you're a little slow. Now, the other issue that comes up all the time is there aren't really any slow speed people around. Well, there you go. We just answered that in the previous one. There's lots of slow speed operators. You just have to find them. And again, you can find them in various ways. There's Facebook groups, which are made up of slow speed operators. You can go the reverse beacon network. You can look there. Most of the club sites will have a calling frequency where you can find people. The SKCC is an excellent one when you're starting off and you want to talk to people and have people come back to you at your speed. There's all sorts of different things. And, I did do a video on that as well. And that's, I think, probably one of the most popular videos. So obviously there's a need for people to know that there are slow speed operators out there. Another myth is that, well, you go on the air and you're slow and you make mistakes and you screw up and you freeze and you don't leave enough spaces between all your words and so on. And certainly when you're starting, that's going to be pretty common. And the fear is that the other operators are going to look down at you. Other operators are going to criticize you. Someone's going to come back and say, why are you on the air? Not true at all. I found the other operators to be absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. They're very helpful. Matter of fact, one of my very first contacts, I really butchered it. It was bad. And after it was over, I just sent the guy a note. I said, geez, I'm sorry. I just froze on that one. And I'm sorry it was such rough copying. And, he wrote back and he said he was laughing because he said it reminded him of his first time. He called CQ and somebody answered. And he got so nervous and so sort of locked up on it, he turned off his radio. He was just too afraid to answer. So you know what? Most of the other operators have been through this. It's not something you have to worry about. Again, if you look at the learning process, you hear people say, well, I got to a certain level and I just couldn't go any further. I was stuck. I couldn't learn all the letters, or I couldn't learn all the numbers or the punctuation and so on. And that's a very common complaint from people who have dropped out of, the study of Morse code or learning Morse code. It's what we call a plateau. Every operator, when you're starting off, you're going to reach them. It may be that you can't get beyond a certain speed. Maybe you're stuck at 10 words per minute and you just can't, no matter how hard you want to go faster, you're just not. Just relax, go with it. It may be that you can't learn your numbers. You're getting your numbers backwards. Your number, let's say number 1, you're mixing up with number 6 and so on. So what? Hang in there, keep doing it. And all of a sudden you're going to find, wow, everything just cleared up. Now I'm on again. I'm off. I'm running. I'm doing great. It's a plateau. Most of us reach those. And again, it's not something that you need to worry about. And I guess now get back into the sequence here. Myth number 6. I don't like to memorize, and I don't want to sit down and memorize that darn chart of Morse code letters and dots and dashes. Good. It's actually the wrong way to study. Now, many of us, myself included, back in 1989 and 90, that's how it was done. We memorized that chart. We memorized it. I can remember some of my instructors holding up flashcards, and a whole room full of people would call out the letter, or they would ask an individual in the class, "What letter am I holding up?" You don't learn that way. Not nowadays. Nowadays, you learn by sound, acoustic sound. Every letter has a sound, and that's how Morse code is taught now. Some people call it instant character recognition. Your ear becomes tuned to that sound, just like it does with the language. I say the word help to you. You're not going, let's say that was an H, an E, an L, and a P. No, you've heard the sound, and your ear has picked up that sound and translated it, in this case, into the word help. The same happens with individual letters. So, no, you definitely do not memorize that chart. That's probably one of the worst things you can do when you try and learn Morse code. So, you can toss that chart away. We absolutely do not need it. Myth number 7, I don't have the time. Most of us equate studying something with putting in hours and hours and hours. And a lot of people think that, I don't have an hour, hour and a half a day to set aside to study Morse code. But in reality, you don't need to. A lot of the people will tell you what you really need to do is relax. The moment you get uptight and you get tense, it's harder to learn. So with Morse code, if you can do 30 minutes a day, that would be really good. You don't have to do it all at once. You can do 10 minutes, take a break, maybe later in the day, come back to another 10 minutes, come back to another 10 minutes, maybe even do it 15 and 15, whatever works for your schedule. So the schedule is not an excuse for not learning Morse code because you can work around it. Now, the biggest thing is not so much the amount of time, but the consistency and the quality of what you're doing. So you have to be consistent. Now, Morse code is much harder to learn if you're one of those people who maybe will go like gangbusters for, let's say, 3-4 days, and then, I'm exhausted. And you come back 2-3 days later, and, geez, I don't remember half of what I learned. That's why. Consistency and not getting stressed out about it will get you far further than trying to sit down and spend half an hour or an hour a day to try and learn, because your brain is only going to take in so much, and especially on something new, because it is, like we say, it's similar to learning a language. So number 8 basically is, I don't know what to send. I'm lost. I know the letters, I know the words, but I don't know what to send. All these guys on the air are sending whole things back and forth. Well, most of the good sites out there will give, some will call it a protocol, some will call it a cheat sheet, some will call it a script. But most of the main sites will actually have a sequence written down for you. I prefer to call it a cheat sheet or a script. I want to do POTA. Well, there's a sequence when there's a POTA exchange. There's a sequence when the operator calls, you answer, he answers you, different bits of information are exchanged, and then at the end, he says thank you very much, and dit dit, and you do a dit dit, and it's over. But there's a sequence, and once you learn the sequence, then you know what to say and what to send. It's not rocket science. It's all there for you. So there's no point panicking over you're not going to know what to say. I guess the next myth, you have to be perfect before you get on the air. There's a lot of this. People don't get on the air because, my goodness, I can only get 90% copy or 60% copy or 70% copy, whatever it happens to be. No, just relax. Have a bit of fun. The odds of you getting perfect copy are just about zero. Why? Because You don't know how good the other operator is. Maybe he's like you, just new and nervous and making mistakes. Maybe there's a lot of noise. Maybe the bands are all messed up. Maybe there's another contest on somewhere and you have operators who are coming in on top of you. So forget about trying to get ready to get on the air. Once you know your stuff, you know your numbers, you know your letters, you know most of your abbreviations, get on the air. Now, a lot of organizations will help you do that. Like I said, LICW has actually a program for that. All right, in our club, there's a program where they try and get people on the air, roughly 12 words a minute. It works really well. When I did it, I didn't even want to wait for that. I just reached the point because I had been doing it for so long. I just said, no, I'm just going to go on the air. And I did. And I think there's even some videos on that, including all the mistakes I made. I couldn't care less. I made a lot of mistakes. The other operators didn't mind. And I went into the SKCC and I just posted right on their schedule page. I said, hey, I'm brand new at this. I'm looking to get on the air. I'd like to make my first contact. And I didn't just have one contact, I had three. Three people, sent me a note and said, yeah, what frequency are you on? How fast do you want to go? Okay, yep, we'll match your speed. We'll call and you can answer. And that's exactly what we did. So, there are ways to do it. You just got to get over that fear that someone's going to be laughing at you. Now, they've all been there too. And last but not least, myth number 10. Morse code is dead. Morse code is a dying art. Nobody's interested in learning Morse code anymore. After all, we have cell phones. We have all sorts of ways. We have Zoom for meetings. Who needs Morse code? Surprisingly enough, Morse code has just taken off. Hundreds and thousands of people looking to learn Morse code. And again, if I just use LICW, and they're just one of several organizations that are teaching people, 5,180 members as I make this video. Members in 50 different countries because they do a lot of their training by Zoom, so you can do it around the world. And 138 classes a week learning Morse code. Pretty darn good. Why the interest? Hard to say. Certainly the Summits on the Air or SOTA and Parks on the Air or POTA have contributed to this explosion, to the pandemic where people were trying to stay away and find new hobbies, or they couldn't go into work, whatever, had more times on their hands, so they decided to look for things to do. Lots of new radios have come out too as a result of all this. Little small portable radios that you can put in a backpack and take out into the woods with you. All sorts of new antennas and so on that you can use. So the hobby has taken off, but a large part of that is the CW part of the hobby. So no, you're not unusual if you want to learn Morse code. You're probably one of many thousands of people who are now interested in doing this. What you have to do is decide how you're going to do it. Preferably do it with some organization somewhere so you can get a bit of guidance and not just do it on your own. But even that's up to you. You can do it on your own if you really want to. So there you go. Busting 10 myths just to give you an idea that yes, the guy sitting in front of you was able to do it. You're going to be able to do it too. Keith, Victor Echo 3, Sierra Victor Quebec, and Victor Alpha 3, Kilo Echo India. Wishing you a great day. 73, dit dit.